Elliot was my older brother. He's 2 years older than me, and we grew up in Charleston. We lived right down the street from here, 56 Meeting Street, till I was about 6, and Elliot was about 8. Our father and grandfather were both lawyers, so it was sort of a natural thing that we would think about going into law. Elliot, of course, he finished ahead of me. He was 2 years older than me, and Elliot started out with the public defender's office. That was good training because it gave him lots of business and gave him an opportunity to appear in court and get court experience, and Elliot did very well. Oh, his clients loved him. He treated his clients with great respect, and he did a lot of work in the criminal court. I know he's told me one story. Elliot a lot of the clients Elliot saw, of course, they'd been accused of crimes, and Elliot would, ask him what happened. And this young man told the story, and Elliot just shook his head and said, "Your own mother wouldn't believe that story." And he said, "Oh yeah, I told my mother, and she believed me." He had a wife, and they had 2 boys. He had a wonderful sense of humor, and he was a very knowledgeable and very well read. And I know for Christmas before he died, of course I gave him a book. That was a natural present that I thought, because he enjoyed reading so much, and he just had a vast store of knowledge about a lot of different things.
I first became aware of Beatty at public defender conferences. He was a fairly new, young public defender, and he was up presenting at the conference, and he was remarkable. Martha Dykes reached out to him at Richland County and almost single-handedly recruited him to the Charleston office. We brought him in as a chief litigator, and he was remarkable. None of us had ever seen anyone with a command of the law and a command of a jury like Beatty. But he was named a faculty member of the National Criminal Defense College in Georgia, and he would go there for a week or 2 weeks in the summer to teach lawyers from all over the country, criminal defense lawyers. And he would come back to our office, and we benefited from that tremendously. So Beatty not only created lawyers throughout the country, Charleston County also had legions of people that have been trained by Beatty as well. Beatty was born to be a public defender. Beatty had a tough exterior. He could be very gruff when you met him, but those who spent any time with him completely fell under his spell. He was charming, he was witty. Beatty was a tiger in the courtroom. I've seen many fantastic lawyers perform in court. I've never seen anyone come close to what Beatty could do. When Beatty was doing a cross-examination, oftentimes the courtroom would fill with people to observe how he did it. We always assumed he'd be a confirmed bachelor, but he met a wonderful, wonderful girl, Claire, actually at the trial college, and they married and were able to have a child just shortly before he passed away. It was very sweet, very touching. In the hospital room, Claire would be right there with Beatty, and little Beatty, the baby, was on Beatty's chest. Beatty was certainly aware that he'd had a child, but it was right at the end. I guess what I'll always remember about Beatty was his devotion to his client and his willingness to put everything he had into his representation.
I clerked for Judge Howard from 1993 until 1995, and I got to sit next to him on the bench every day. And what Judge would always do with me is he would look and say, "Art, what do you think?" Here he's listened to some incredible luminaries of the bar, perhaps, and he looks at you as a 25, 26-year-old brand new, maybe not even a licensed lawyer at that point, and he's looking at you and saying, "What do you think?" And he was always wonderful about that, always valued, my opinion. I never heard anybody in the years I worked for him or in the years afterwards say anything bad about him. As a judge, he was very thoughtful, always very considerate, always very careful to be polite, and it's something that he drilled into me and anybody else. You'll recall that Judge Howard was the trial court judge for the Susan Smith trial. That was the trial of the century in South Carolina in the 1990s, which he knew was going to be a tremendous burden, but he was very well qualified to do. During that time, we faced dozens of issues, one of which, of course, was whether the cameras ought to be in the courtroom. He was careful in listening to the oral arguments, but he made a decision right then. And he looked at the media and he said, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, get the cameras and get the equipment out of the courtroom. And that's the way he was. He would do his homework ahead of time, he was very prepared, and he was decisive. At the same time as the Susan Smith trial was going on, the O.J. Simpson case was going on across the country in California. Judge Ito's law clerk called us and they said, we want a copy of the order where Judge Howard removed the cameras from the courtroom. And I laughed on the phone because I said, you want an order? Do you have a pencil? Write this down. Get the cameras out, you've got 5 minutes. That literally was all it was. He met Daphne when they were at Dickinson College together. They were married and had kids before they graduated from college. Twins, Billy and Tiffany. He loved his family tremendously. He had plenty of pictures on his desk. The last day that I worked for him, we stood in the parking lot in Melbourne Avenue, and he gave me one last attempt of Judge Howard's rules on life. The number one rule for Judge Howard was be nice. Very simple, very easy, be nice. He spent 2 years drilling that into me as his law clerk, and he spent the 20 plus years afterwards drilling that into me as a person.
I met Kenny in 1995 as a first year at University of South Carolina Law. We had a class full of amazing people, and Kenny was a star who had a shine that no one could miss. His friend Anne-Marie Haygood reminded me he was the only student we knew who would go home and make fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and le sueur peas for lunch, but he was always amenable to skipping torts in favor of a pitcher of beer and a game of pool at Stuffy's. Kenny was a world-class doodler. His elaborate drawings started in law school and continued throughout his life. We all doodle in CLEs in his remembrance. Kenny was a quintessential Southern lawyer who loved being a lawyer in the Low Country. So much so that I heard his business card turned up in a courtroom shortly after his death for one of his law school classmates to find. This was a courtroom Kenny never entered to anyone's recollection. Few lawyers leave calling cards behind the way Kenny did in the lives of those who knew and loved him. He loved his law practice and the law. The thing I most loved and remember about Kenny was his love for life, every single moment, and his devotion to his friends and the friends of his friends. He had the best guffawing laugh and smile. He also had a serious side. He could talk about the challenges he had faced in life and was a rock to those who needed him. From the sudden death of his dad in law school and understanding grief, to his own heart attack at a young age, to his cancer diagnosis, he was hopeful. One of his best friends, Allison Aiken Hanna, says, in Kenny's last years, he mellowed and reflected, but retained his very essence. He was content. He was happy. He was in a good space that fit his being. Dara Coleman, another best friend, says, he loved his mama, his daughter, his partner, his brother, his supper club, his dog, his church pew, Canuga, his many loyal friends, seersucker in the summer, and travel year-round. He was a gifted pianist and a lover of Southern literature. He hated cancer, but never lost his sense of humor. Kenny was such a character, his friends and family adored him and will miss him terribly.
I first met Sims in April of 2004, and I was about to finish my first year of law school, so I took a big stack of resumes and I got to 36 Broad Street, which was Sims' office. A fellow student of mine I didn't know was working there answered the door and said, well, Mr. McDowell's out for the afternoon. I said, well, I'm handing out resumes looking for a job, and I'm even willing to work for free. And about that time, Sims poked his head from around the corner and he says, well, come right in. Sims was the kind of lawyer who was inclined to give his client the shirt off of his back. especially for a man of his age and generation. I don't think that I ever knew someone who was less likely to notice a person's race, sex, socioeconomic status, and was very sympathetic to people who maybe had a challenging background and were in dark times. Sims knew everybody on the street, and it didn't matter if it was the janitor or the clerk in the family court or the sheriff's deputy or whomever. He was on a first-name basis with everybody. His wonderful wife Elsa was his strength and support for many, many years, and she loved him dearly. He has two wonderful grown daughters. He was very protective of his daughters. I remember one of his daughters going on the first date, and Sims, as a Southern gentleman, insisted that the young man knock on the door, come into the house, and Sims just happened to be cleaning his shotgun when the young man came by. The things I think I will most remember about Sims are actually a couple things. One would be the willingness to meet with anyone, anytime, to help them in their time of need, and making that a priority. And number two, I think I'll remember the stories. Sims was a legendary storyteller, either of his own amusing anecdotes or incidents that had happened in his life during his time in the military. And that's something that I've tried to imitate, but I'd never be as good at it as he is, or was.
Graham graduated from law school in Columbia, and we're looking for lawyers. He applied right out of law school, and he came down for an interview, and we all met him and liked him very much. He received an offer to be a law clerk for a state court judge, and we talked to him and turned that down and come work for us. We throw them the wolves right away, and he was trying cases after a year. So he was very good. I talked to a lot of judges who thought he did a superb job. Graham was a hard worker, very engaged, very engaging, fun to be around, and you could always count on him to do what was right and get it done properly. Graham's relationship with the clients was very good. He was always very interested in their case and their results. We are fortunate that we represented a lot of large corporations and insurance companies, and so we not only dealt with the individual defendant, but also their employer or their insurance company, and he was very, very good with all of them also. Graham was very gregarious. He played a fiddle, and he was in a band, a country band, and so you could tell how outgoing he was, and he got along very well with everybody. I'm going to remember Graham for all his fun and hard work. He was a good person to be around and very beneficial to the law firm. He'd be missed.
Bill did criminal defense law primarily, and so he was a source for me for questions. So he was always available, always accommodating, and he helped sort of teach me the code among lawyers that older lawyer, more experienced lawyer will always answer the questions from and accommodate the young lawyer as they are climbing the learning curve. Many lawyers talk about, and it's in our oath, that we have a duty to represent our clients and to do so zealously. With Bill Runyon, it was more than that. It was, I'll say, a calling. And when Bill Runyon got a call from a prospective client, he always helped them. Whether they were going to pay nothing or little or something, he just wanted to help, and he did. He felt it innately that his place on earth, his calling, was to help people. Bill's wife, Mary, is a highly intelligent lady. They were married, 40 plus years. Very, very bright children. For one thing, they indulged Bill with all the time that he devoted to his legal work. I'm going to remember the most about Bill, having had a kind of dedication to the legal profession unlike perhaps I've ever seen, in his generosity with helping young lawyers get started and his helping the public at large, taking any case. Most lawyers don't handle every single area of law. Bill every area. He was that generous with his time and his devoted to his calling of being a lawyer, always available. These people were in need. He was there to help.
When it came time to start applying and interviewing for jobs, John's reputation at the bar was incredible. And so he was one of the people I first picked out that as someone I'd like to learn under and practice under. John was the type of lawyer we all want to be. He was even-tempered, extremely intelligent, but self-deprecating in a way that would make everyone feel comfortable around him. He was a trial lawyer, a litigator, and treated everyone with the respect that we should all strive to do. And he made everyone feel comfortable, whether it was opposing counsel, whether it was a judge, his client, or a witness. John was the comforting presence. The family was very important to John. His family, definitely very important to him, but he was a big proponent of the work-life balance, maintaining that with your practice, because he would say, and it's true, you're a better lawyer if you have that work-life balance. John, throughout his career, mentored a lot of lawyers, and so fortunately there are a lot of lawyers out there who learned from him about that and have been able to maintain that balance, hopefully. I'll remember about John how he comforted everyone around him. And that was even near the end when he got his diagnosis. In typical John Tiller fashion, he comforted us, those close to him, as opposed to the opposite. We changed the mediation, or revised the name of the mediation center to the Smith Tiller Mediation Center. Any lawyers in Charleston County or the state, most of them been here because of John Tiller. He was one of the go-to mediators in our state, not only because he got the job done, because everybody wanted to be around him. He was their friend. His name's on the sign, but anybody that comes in these doors knows that his presence is here.
As an attorney, I would say he was one of the smartest, most intellectual attorneys I've ever known. Johnny's clients loved him. He was a consummate lawyer. He was brilliant. He was the epitome of honesty and integrity. He accomplished great results for his clients, so his clients loved him. Johnny was a devoted family man. He has a lovely wife, Helen, 3 wonderful children. As many people know, Johnny took a sabbatical, 25 years, maybe a little more than that. Took a 1-year sabbatical and sailed across the Atlantic Ocean with his family on a 39-foot sailboat. When he wasn't practicing law, he had multiple other interests. In later years, he took up the violin. He was an equestrian. He was a bicyclist. He was a Renaissance man with many interests. In addition to practicing law, Johnny believed that he should give back to the community, and he did so in so many ways. He gave abundantly of his time, talent, and treasure to a number of local organizations. He was on the board of Roper Hospital. He was on the board of Splato Festival USA. He was the chair of the board of Historic Charleston Foundation. He chaired the board of the College of Charleston Foundation, and he chaired twice the board of the Charleston Symphony. Johnny always wanted to be the best of the best, and I think accomplished that. He was constantly studying. He urged lawyers with whom he worked to do the same, to constantly improve yourself. Johnny was a wonderful friend. He was a brilliant lawyer. He was a student of Goethe, and I think Goethe once said that nothing is to be more prized than the value of each day, and he lived every day to the fullest.